Alrighty. So we are in day three of our ELO-P Academy. We're going to be diving into understanding ELO-P reporting and compliance monitoring. We only have an hour to dive into everything today, so remember that this is an introduction to the topic and we may not be able to answer all of your questions in the chat box in real time or during the presentation, but we will make sure to track all of your questions to make sure that someone follows up. After our session, we will have closing comments, have a short transition, and then be moving into regional breakout spaces. And we will be closing the Zoom at 12 p.m. So there's no need to come back into the main space when your regional breakouts are over. And the Spring Academy is not over yet. Our last session is on Thursday on CBO and LEA partnerships and how they support high quality ELO programs. Make sure to sign up if you haven't already by scanning this QR code or by following the bit.ly link on the slide in front of you. And then, do you have questions that are very in the weeds or super specific to your community and school site? Make sure to sign up for ELO-P office hours, because that's an opportunity to connect with Michael Funk, the director of the Expanded Learning Division at CDE, to get all those wonderful answers. And you can also sign up for those sessions with the QR code or by following the link. And make sure to connect with us on social media to get all of the information on CAN all the time. We have a very engaging social media presence, I want to say. So I hope you can join us in all of the fun stuff that we post. And remember that it takes a village to create these high quality programs for our youth. Know that the system of support in your region is available to help you. If you don't know who those folks are, scan this QR code so that you can get in touch with the folks that are providing support in your specific area. Okay. And now that we have all of those logistics out of the way, I have the pleasure of introducing our amazing presenters for today. These are two people that live and breathe all the technical language on compliance and ed code, so you are in very good hands. So I am introducing Iqbal from the Program Monitoring Office and Josh Brady from the Grants Monitoring and Evaluation Office. Super excited for today.
Okay, so I'll take it away. I guess we're up. I'm going to share my screen. So thank you very much, Nat. Give me a second. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joshua Brady. I am one of the administrators in the Expanded Learning Division, and I am very excited to be here with one of my colleagues. Iqbal, introduce yourself. Take it away.
Good morning. My name is Iqbal Badwalz, and I'm an education administrator for the newly established Program Monitoring Office. And I'm supporting the audit resolution throughout the state and the FPMs. And thank you all for joining us. Next slide, please.
Great, thank you. And so today, Iqbal and myself, we're going to provide some basic information. Again, feel free to ask questions in the chat. And then we may engage you as well with some questions and asking some best practices and whatnot. So we're going to be providing an overview of audits and FPMs. What is the purpose of these, the responsibility, and then the education code requirements that makes these both a requirement? Another thing we'll be looking at is the procedures for audits and FPMs. What are the similarities, but what are the differences between audits and FPMs? Another thing that we'll highlight in this presentation is another major change. ELO-P has been added to the Federal Program Monitoring Instrument for both the Expanded Learning Division and for the Fiscal Monitors and Audits and Investigations. So you'll hear us talk about this a few times because it is something new and we want to make sure everyone is aware of this. It is two separate instruments. And the last thing we'll be talking about is promising practices for both audits and FPMs. And we're hoping that all of you have some great ideas with how you prepare for FPM as well. So let's get this started. And Iqbal, you take it away.
Thank you. Since we are going to be discussing the similarities and the differences between audits and FPMs, we thought I'll go ahead and speak about audits and Joshua will speak about FPMs. And we may step in, add additional information as and when needed. Other than that, I'll be speaking mostly about audits. An audit is an independent examination of financial information of an entity to express an opinion on the entity's financial well-being. And it's much bigger than just state and federal compliance. It is also verifying the expenditures of the LEA of the entity and expressing an opinion by an independent auditor. Josh?
Great. Thank you, Iqbal. And very similar to audits, the purpose of the federal program monitoring is to ensure that the categorical funds are spent as required by law. But not only are the funds spent by law, but that the program is adhering to the specific program requirements that were either laid out in education code, regulation, or in the instrument itself.
So we'll be talking a lot about the law, and we will also be giving citations about the education code. California Education Code 41020 requires each and every LEA in the state of California to obtain an annual audit. Each and every LEA, which means districts, county offices of education, as well as charter schools. Each LEA needs to have an annual audit and submit their reports to California Department of Education. Josh?
Right. And with FPMs, federal and state law requires us to monitor categorical programs. We've been doing this even with our ACES and 21st century programs. And then for expanded learning, we actually select LEAs and non-LEAs that we review them for compliance, specifically for non-LEAs because they're eligible for 21st century. And then the education code. For ELO-P, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, right? Because ELO-P has its own education code. However, there are quite a few sections that are referenced in ELO-P that align to the ACES education code. So where does it give us the authority to do this? Well, California Education Code 8482.3 G2, which is the ACES education code, states the department shall monitor this review as part of its on-site monitoring process. And so this is aligned with ACES. FPMs have been occurring this year for both ELO-P and even for the fiscal monitors as well.
So both audits and FPMs, they are processes. And as I mentioned earlier, that all LEAs are required to be audited annually. The interesting thing is that the LEA's governing board selects the independent auditors, audit firms for the LEA's audits. These are not CDE auditors. These are auditors selected by the districts, county offices of education, and or charter schools, independent governing board, and they are independent auditors. And if you wanted to contact and find out when are the auditors going to be in the field, you should reach out to your chief business official, your LEA's chief business official. Most of you, if you are in the financial area, would already know that you are being audited and who the auditors are. Each year they come to your LEA. If you do not know, please reach out to your chief business official in the business office and they'll be able to help you out, letting you know when the auditors are going to be in the field. I can share with you, I have been an auditor about 25 years ago with the state controller's office. What I can share with you is that for the 23-24 audit, for the 23-24 ELO-P audit, the auditors are going to be in the field starting January this year till June, verifying the state and federal compliance requirements, and then they come back somewhere in September, October, November to verify the expenditures and fund balances. The law requires the auditors to submit their audit report by December 15th, 2024 for the school year 23-24. So the auditors are likely to be in the field, likely to be at your district. You should reach out to your business official to find out more details. Josh?
Great, thank you, Iqbal. In the process for FPMs, at the California Department of Education, we actually have our own federal program monitoring office. That office is led by an administrator as well as education programs consultants who are the review team leads. They're the ones that coordinate all the reviews with all of the program offices. And so the LEAs are assigned to one of four cohorts, A, B, C, or D. A and C are reviewed in 1 year, and then B and D are reviewed in another year. And the LEAs or non-LEAs for expanded learning, they're selected using established criteria. So the way it works is the FPM office, they have their own risk assessment. However, they do engage the program offices for input on what they should be looking at. Once they go through their risk assessment, and let's just say they've made selections for cohorts A and C, all those lists are shared with every single program office. So once it comes to us, that's when we have our additional risk assessment, when we look at the list for certain things like what's their grant award, have they had any previous FPM or audit findings, and so on and so forth. So we're looking at the risk assessment. A difference with the FPM is that although all LEAs are assigned to one of these cohorts, not every single LEA will be reviewed for an FPM. However, with audits, every single LEA will go through their own audit. And so that is another difference between audit and FPM. With this new funding, we were able to add a new office, which Iqbal is leading. And so now his staff will be responsible for all expanded learning, FPM, and audit resolution. So although we have our own staff, we'll be able to make some increases in the reviews that we do, but we will not be able to do the amount of reviews that are selected by the FPM office. It's just not reasonable, and it gets really expensive, and we probably need a whole nother office in order to conduct all of them. The best point of contact for FPMs is going to be the LEA's grant coordinator. Usually this person is over state and federal funding, but there's always someone in the LEA that is kind of made to be the FPM contact that works with CD.
So Josh, if I may also add that we are also reviewed by the federal monitors, and the federal monitors have required that we add 21st century and asset sites for our FPM review. And as a result, we have always included assets and 21st century for our FPM reviews. In addition to this, if we ever become aware of any high-risk LEA grantee, we include that also for our FPM review. Thank you. Next, please. So, like I said, that we'll be talking a lot about the law. ELO-P audit procedures are based on education code requirements. Education code 46120, that is specific to ELO-P. And like I said earlier, that we have a big audit committee that is formed of State Controller's Office, Department of Finance, and California Department of Education with various programs in attendance. In addition to this, we have independent auditors representing the field. They all get together and continue to work on compiling the audit guide procedures. And your 23-24 audit guide was posted on July 1st at the link that is shown on Education Audit Appeal Panel's webpage. This audit guide, once it's approved by the Education Audit Appeals Panel, it becomes California Code of Regulations.
Great. And then to add on to the audit guide, and we'll get into some of the weeds later, but there should be no surprises. If you've looked at the ELO-P education code and you've looked at the audit guide, it should be directly aligned. And then the only differences will be the procedures with the information that they're collecting. And we do have an example that we'll show later. But for FPMs, again, based on education code, you're going to hear us say that again and again. It has to be based on the law. And I've mentioned this again previously, but The link is here for the instruments. There is an instrument for expanded learning that consists of 20 items. However, what you're going to want to do is look in that instrument and probably do a control find for ELO-P, right? Because out of those 20, not all 20 are being reviewed for ELO-P. There's only a few of them that are being reviewed. And then note, there is a separate instrument for fiscal monitoring for ELO-P. Their instrument is 11 items. And again, this isn't anything new. I'll provide you an example. Previously, when 21st Century was being reviewed, let's just say I was in the field. I may get a call from a fiscal monitor that was reviewing a completely different LEA. Expanded learning wasn't being reviewed, but the fiscal was being reviewed. And what the fiscal being reviewed was all the title programs. And included in those title programs was Title IV Part B, which is 21st Century. So again, this is just aligning more so with this process, and that there will be two reviewers. One will be specific to expanded learning, and another one will be from audits and investigations, specifically looking at fiscal processes for ELO-P. And I just want to add one other thing, that these instruments, every year, there's an opportunity for all program offices to update their instruments. But no, these instruments go through a review process internally, then they're shared with branch, they're shared with legal before they're even posted to the website. So Iqbal, do you want to add anything?
Just wanted to add that Thing has posted the link for fiscal monitoring ELO-P instrument in the chat. Please take note of that. Thank you, Thing. And thank you, Juan, for your comments a little bit earlier. Next, please.
Thank you for paying attention to the chat, because I cannot see it since I'm doing the slide deck. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate the support. Go ahead, Iqbal.
23-24 audit guide. So the good news for all of the folks on the screen on this session is that your 23-24 data is going to be reviewed for 23-24 audit guide. You will notice there's a difference over here when Josh starts speaking about the FPMs. Like I said earlier, that the auditors come during the year, January through June, to look at state and federal requirements, and then come to from September through November to look at the expenditures and fund balances to issue the audit report. So basically, for school year or fiscal year 23-24, the audit report is going to be issued December 15th, 2024, which is after the school year has already closed. And another good news for you folks is that the audit procedures are review only for program data. None of the fiscal data is being reviewed for ELO-P in 23-24. Josh?
Thanks, Iqbal. And for FPMs, has always been the case, for program data, we'll look at current year if it's available. Prior year data may be reviewed if the FPMs are in August and September and the programs are just getting off the ground. And then always for fiscal data, we always look at the year prior, so we have a full snapshot of what occurred. But for ELO-P, know that it's important to look at the instrument. We're not looking at 8515 for ELO-P. Really what we're looking for ELO-P from a fiscal standpoint is, were the funds spent according to the board approved program plan, right? And if there was a purchase, was a cost share added to that purchase if it was warranted? And we'll get into that a little bit more. But I just wanted to also say that just as all of you are being reviewed, the department gets reviewed, specifically expanded learning. This past summer, the U.S. Department of Education monitored our 21st Century program. So I understand no one likes this, but it actually, I think it's helpful to go through it. If you've never been through it, I think it's helpful. If you don't want to go through it, do a mock one yourself just to see, or have a colleague go through it and do an informal one with you. It can't hurt just to kind of see where you're at.
How to prepare for an audit? The simplest way to do it is to create documentation and maintain documentation and share it with the auditors when they come. And I will share it with you, a couple of suggestions given by one of my colleagues that I cannot take credit for. And I'll go through those questions. But examples are advertising on a website, emails, handouts, announcements, anything that you have sent. And now going over a couple of examples on how to prepare an audit. Provide a copy of the program plan, ELO-P program plan, to your auditor. Simplest, first thing to do. Provide a copy of communications sent to the families about the ELO-P program. Provide a list of registration forms received by the LEA. Provide a master list of students enrolled. Provide attendance calendar, which is basically a school calendar. Provide sample register rosters, attendance rosters, because that will allow the auditors, the reviewers to verify the 10:1 ratio for TK and K and 20:1 ratio for all other grades. Provide any other evidence that shows the educational and literacy elements that were provided to the students during the ELO-P program. I hope that helps gather an understanding of what all documents are required for sharing with auditors. Josh?
Great, thank you. So how to prepare for an FPM? Well, I think this is the perfect opportunity to engage some of you. If we have a brave soul that's listening in and wants to come off mute, is anyone willing to share how you prepared for FPM before and maybe what your experience was? And so feel free to come off mute and jump right in.
I can share. My name's Omar Hernandez with King Chavez in San Diego. And so one of the items that we use, we currently have ACES for our after school program, and we utilize CitySpan as the system that tracks our attendance. So we utilize the same system for tracking our attendance for ELO-P. So we are able to pull reports and et cetera for obviously showing the documentation of that attendance.
Great. Thank you, Omar, for being a brave first person to volunteer. I appreciate that. Anyone else want to just share how you've prepared for an FPM in the past?
I'll share.
Thank you.
Hi. So I went through a few FPMs when I was with Fresno County Superintendent of Schools at my middle school. And so we went through a few mock FPMs where we had some project specialists from the county come and make sure that our documentation was in order, that we conducted our own attendance audits, that anything that was sent out to families, we made sure that it was in both languages, just making sure that everything, like you gentlemen mentioned, everything that was sent out, any form of communication, any expenditure, that we kept records of.
Great. Thank you so much, Nancy. I appreciate it. And let's take one or two more. I want to hear from you guys, and I think everyone else on here would love to hear ideas and strategies that you've used before too. So let's take one or two more.
I'll jump in and share. Oh, go ahead.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Thanks. We had an FPM last year in San Rafael. And the first thing I did was call Region 4 for help because I had never done that before. And so Shamia, Akila, Iqbal, I can't remember who else, but they all jumped on and helped me out and helped me get organized and kind of get my eyes wrapped around it. And then I worked with a partner here at our school district, and we created like a virtual filing system to basically capture all of these components and put them into digital files to then upload into the instrument, which seemed to work out pretty well.
Great. And Mike, as a result, did you feel more prepared?
Well, the day of, yes.
Thanks, Mike.
But more, I would say more prepared now for any future FPMs, for
Right.
sure.
And Judy, did you want to chime in? Or someone else I know wanted to say something? Let's keep this going.
My name's Jennifer Davis. I'm from Fairfax School District. We went through an FPM, and it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. My suggestion is to really familiarize yourself with the instrument. And as you're doing, like what was suggested before, as you're rolling out your program, just make sure that you're taking steps that align with that. And then it's just kind of collecting those evidence pieces. We had to do an upload. And I know that the word findings freaks people out. But an FPM, it really isn't a gotcha. It's a way to support the LEA, making sure that they're compliant. So I will say there were a couple of adjustments that we had to make, a couple of corrections. And so what we did is we either went back and found documentation that met that need, or we made the corrections to our program. And so it ended up being a positive experience, even though we did not hit it perfect the first time. You know, we made the corrections that made us compliant, that needed to be done for the program. And we were given time to get that together and submit it, and then we were good to go. So I know that if you haven't been through one, it could be a little bit scary, but it's actually really a positive experience, because the intent is to make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row. And I think if you look at it from a support perspective, that will kind of bring the anxiety down.
Jennifer, I did not pay her to say any of this, I promise. And that was amazing because it's true. Everything you said, I mean, I was going to say, and I got goosebumps listening to you because it should be a positive experience at the end of the day. At the end of the day, the reviewers that you encounter, our whole goal is to ensure that kids are feeling supported and that funds are being spent the right way on students. And so that's very true, Jennifer. This is not an I gotcha moment. I think that it can be very informative if it's done the right way. And so thank you for sharing. Let's do one more. Anyone else want to share? We got Lorena with your hand up.
Hey, Josh, as a former administrator, we went through a lot of FPMs. But one of the things that I appreciate about CDE, it was more of a partnership. So it was a thought partner because we did have many findings in one particular district that I work with, but they were always willing to come up with solutions. So we worked together to come up with solutions. We worked together with the county. So it wasn't, and I agree with Jennifer, it wasn't like I got you. It's like, how can we support you to make this better? And, one of the biggest things too that we asked to our partner, and at that time, I think it was Iqbal, is to do a training with our staff. So we brought every department that was involved in FPM, and we talked about the process. What did you need to submit? How did you submit it? And when it was, due by. So people were very collaborative. They were appreciative of the fact that they understood how programs are blending or braiding into others and what we needed to do as a team. So
Great. And Lorena is part of our system of support for expanded learning. So thank you, Lorena, for your experience and for sharing with everyone on this academy. So thank you so much.
you're welcome.
We have a little bit of time. So anyone else want to kind of share an example or a reaction of their experience before we move on? Let's hear from one more. Don't be shy. Come on. We got the momentum going. Let's keep it going.
So I haven't actually been through one yet, but I got some advice from my director sort of beforehand, and I basically created a folder for every like goal, and then I have to go back and continue it because I haven't had the time, but I started to drop in all of my documentation and like any kind of proof that I might have for that. Just sort of throughout the year, and I'm trying to go back in and update it regularly. But again, I haven't been through it yet, so I'm hoping that that's right.
Esther, you're a rock star. Because what I was gonna say next is start now. You never want to wait to go through an FPM to start. And Esther, what you're doing is the right thing to do. There are so many different ways to do it. Create a Google folders, other type of folders, hard copy folders. But as long as you're adding to it and updating documentation, if you have other systems like CitySpan and so on and so forth. So there are so many ways to be prepared for an FPM. But my best recommendation is start right away. Start today if you don't have a system, even coming up with a framework. And again, we're here as a support and a help. And I loved what all the comments that everyone said. hopefully an FPM is a good experience for all of you. I know going through it with the U.S. Department of Ed, yeah, no one likes it, right? No one likes someone, looking under the, the refrigerator and things like that. Like, no, that's not what we're doing. We're just looking at the documentation that's right in front of us. And, and we want to be a help to you as well. At the end of the day, it's all about being a help. And like Lorena said, a partner with you in this. So we're going to move on.
Thank you, Josh. Tiffany posted a comment in chat, which is very helpful. She said that if there is a finding, we will find a way to resolve it. So audit findings will always be resolved. There are two types of audit findings that are going to come in ELO-P. One is the findings with fiscal impact, fiscal penalty. And we will be sharing with you the penalty calculator in one of our slides moving forward. And I just want to share with you that auditor uses this calculator to calculate the fiscal penalty. They will identify the dollar amount and state it in the audit report. That audit report will come to California Department of Education and the School Fiscal Services Division, one of our divisions or one of our core divisions. They will be able to adjust this fiscal amount against your apportionment, prior year adjustment in apportionments. Now, there's a second kind of findings, which is going to be non-compliance. And these findings, we will be reaching out to you after we have received the audit report. So what happens is once the auditor completes the audit report and they submit their audit report to California Department of Education, to the School Fiscal Services Division, another copy to State Controller's Office, and a third copy to respective county office of education. We at California Department of Education, once we receive the ACES 21st Century Assets ELO-P, ELO-G audit findings, we reach out to you. One of our team members will reach out to you and try to suggest you ways to go ahead and resolve the audit findings. What we expect from you is a quick reaching out back to us, a responsive approach, and we can work to really to take care of the audit findings. Josh?
Thank you, Iqbal. So FPM findings, again, no one likes a finding. Maybe they'll change the name of it in the future. I'm not sure. But again, a finding for ELO-P would be for expenditures, if there's a misuse of ELO-P funds. For example, you bought a portable and it's being used by the regular school day, and you bought it with all of ELO-P funds, but there was no cost share agreement. So that would be a finding. And then obviously findings for non-compliance. If you're the board approved program, if the program plan wasn't board approved, right, that would be a finding for non-compliance. And then CDE submits a notification of findings. And so with federal program monitoring, we use, and you will use, what's called the California Monitoring Tool. We refer to that as CMT. Once reviews are done, each program office, actually, it's one notification of finding that includes all program offices, and it lists the number of findings for each program, and then it speaks about the findings. And so, for example, there may be no findings for expanded learning, but Title I may have 3 findings. That notification of finding will spell out every single finding. It will talk about the review dates. It will talk about the reviewers, their contact information. On top of that, though, because we've gotten bigger, and now we have our own program monitoring office, and we started doing this a few years ago. Our review is actually write up a summary, and we call it a post-FPM summary review. And they send it to the management team and then the regional education programs consultant. Why? The reason is because the notification of findings document, it just talks about the finding. It doesn't talk about their reviewer's experience, right? From the start of the review, from reviewing documents, uploading stuff, communication with the LEA, were they responsive? Were they not responsive? What were the key issues? Was it fiscal? Was it time and effort records? Was it their policies? Was it other things? And so this post-review summary gives the management team and the other reviewer an insight into not only the review, if there were findings, but what are some other touch points where technical assistance may be needed with this LEA. So we really worked hard to ensure that communication is occurring internally, and we're continuing to make improvements as this is the first year of Iqbal's new office, the Program Monitoring Office. And this year, all EPCs were doing reviews. So in all three offices, all EPCs were doing these reviews. However, starting next year, Iqbal and Iqbal's team, they're the ones that are going to be doing all FPM reviews as well as all of the audit resolution. And then they will be keeping the regional education programs consultants in the loop, and all the administrators, along with Michael, will be working together to ensure that communication is occurring internally between our office and the program monitoring office. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh. I want to add something about the FPMs. FPM is Federal Program Monitoring. Now, this doesn't mean that only federal programs are being monitored. It just means that the title of the department of the division is Federal Program Monitoring. Prior to FPMs, it used to be CPMs, Categorical Program Monitorings. And there was, in the legislature, there was a change in law where instead of categorical program funding, the apportionment was given in block grants. As a result, we had to change the name from Categorical Program Fund Monitoring to Federal Program Monitoring. So just know that when we talk of FPMs, we are talking both of state as well as federal programs being monitored by the California Department of Education. Now, how to resolve audit findings? There'll be, like I mentioned earlier, there'll be two kinds of findings. One would be with fiscal penalty, in which case CDE's School Fiscal Services Division will make an apportionment adjustment for fiscal penalty stated in the audit report. And the second one would be a non-compliance audit findings, which will not have any fiscal impact, and we will reach out to the LEA and suggest ways to go ahead and resolve those audit findings. So please be responsive so that we can work together as a team to get these findings out.
Great. Yes. And again, similar to audits, FPN has their own finding via the California monitoring tool. And again, a finding is issued only if something cannot be resolved prior to the end of the review. And again, this happens sometimes. And so if items can't be resolved, you do have 45 days to upload documents to CMT to resolve the finding. However, there is another period of time that you may request it, and that's up to 225 days. And again, sometimes this is needed, especially if it's a complicated policy, or if it needs to go in front of the board and they're not scheduled to meet for a certain amount of time, or it may deal with your fiscal processes and policies or time and effort records. So some things are pretty easy. Other things may take a little bit more time, but rest assured that we're there to help you resolve it. All right. We're not just going to leave you on an island and say, take care of it. We want to help you. The faster it gets resolved, you're in compliance. And so that's basically an FPM finding.
So these are some of the similarities, in the audits, the auditors will be reviewing for and verifying that the LEA has an ELO-P program plan, and the LEA's ELO-P program was board approved in a public hearing or public setting, and LEA's ELO-P plan is posted on the LEA's webpage for public information. Go ahead, please.
And as you see, everything is the same for FPMs. However, I do want to highlight something here, since we're talking about ELO-P. And ELO-P, the plan is board approved. However, I know some of you are familiar with ACES, and ACES also has a program plan. However, the ACES program plan does not need to be board approved, right? So really make a note of the differences between the ACES plan and the ELO-P plan. They are both based on the 12 quality standards for one and 11 for ELO-P, because we took out sustainability. So you really want to pay attention to the similarities and the differences, and ensure that anytime something major is changing in your ELO-P plan, that it gets board approved again, right? And then you always want to have, like, what was the last date of that board approval? Always have a record of that. So the reviewers know, the auditors know when this plan was last updated. And then obviously you want to keep your other plans as well. But that's just a good practice. And then, of course, ensuring that it's posted on that website.
Also, Josh, if I may say that ELO-P program plan is a living document. So if you have to revised to include additional activities that you're planning to start at your LEAs. Please review and revise the ELO-P program plan, get it board approved, and post it on your webpage. Thank you. And now talking again about similarities, both the auditors as well as the FPM reviewers, they'll be looking at these basic requirements stated in law, that the school operated the ELO-P program plan for 180 regular school days. They operated for 30 non-school days. They operated 9 hours every day, except for frontier sites, it's 8 hours. And then 10:1 ratio for TK and K grades, and 20:1 ratio for all other grades. The ELO-P program is being operated. Josh?
Thank you. And again, as Iqbal mentioned, and you can look at on the slide, again, the same thing for FPM. You know, I would take a look at the instrument because I don't think we even look at all of these things. However, we're always going to be looking at the ratio. That's a standard item that we look at, and so on and so forth. Again, having schedules available, showing us your school calendar, and just making sure that the program was operating according to the law.
Thank you, Josh. Most of you who have been operating ELO-P program, they know that there are 2 rates. Rate 1 is for 2,750 stated in law. And this is applicable for all LEAs that are equal to or more than 75% unduplicated pupil percentages. The requirement is that you should be sending this communication to all families, TK grades, as well as grades 1 through 6. If any of the parents ask for their students to be provided access, the LEA should provide access to all students, and when specifically asked by parent or guardian. Next, please. So here's the difference. This is rate 2. And when an LEA has less than 75% UPP, the rate is lower. It's $1,802.95 for 23-24 school year. And communication needs to be sent to families of all unduplicated students, TK through K grades, as well as grades 1 through 6. Provide access to all unduplicated students, and when parents or guardian request. We have been receiving questions that can ELO-P services be provided to additional students when they have provided services or provided access to all the unduplicated students. And the answer is yes, they can go ahead and provide access to other students also, in addition to all unduplicated students. Next, please. So we are going to give a very small example of what an insufficient documentation would be. And we discussed at length what should be provided to the auditors. And what we have seen insufficient documentation is when you do not have a board-approved ELO-P program plan, or if you have it, but you have not posted it on LEA's webpage. I think the legislative intent is to make it transparent, have all the parents know where the ELO-P program plan is, so everybody is aware of it and they are able to benefit from this expanded learning opportunities.
Right.
Josh?
And then again, similar to audits, again, the ELO plan is not board approved. It's not posted on the website. And again, I want to highlight this in bold: expenditures for activities not included in the ELO-P board approved plan. So that's something that you really want to take a look at.
So the last slide still kind of indicates that expenditures are being reviewed only on the FPMs, and on the audit side, only the program items are being reviewed and not the fiscal items. I wanted to highlight that once again. Now, promising practices, we discussed a lot of questions, a lot of ideas that needs to be presented to the auditors. For the LEA, the best approach would be that review the K through 12 audit guide and start collecting the supporting documentations for the areas that are being tested. You may feel free to reach out to our PMO office, 5 stars listed in the chat box, and for your region, and they'll be able to provide guidance if needed, for starting your audit, gathering evidence for audits. Josh?
Yeah, and again, promising practices for expenditures for ELO-P. Ensure that the expenditures are for activities included in the plan, and it's for expanded learning. Um, Make sure that the expenditures and costs are necessary and reasonable. You have a process for documented in approvals. Keeping good records, including subcontractors. I can't highlight this enough when we're looking at records of LEAs, is ensuring that in your agreements that you guys are reviewing their expenditures and that we have access to them. That's really, really important because at the end of the day, the LEA is the one responsible, right? Especially for ELO-P, since the apportionment is going to the LEA. And so keeping good records, ensuring that there's transparency between yourselves and the contractors, and so on and so forth.
Thank you, Josh. We wanted to kind of paraphrase what K through 12 audit guide is looking for. They're trying to verify in-person before and after school expanded learning opportunities were offered on every school day, and when added to the school day were no less than 9 hours, pursuant to the education code cited there. So the auditors would be reviewing the school attendance calendar and bell schedule to make sure that it adds up to 9 hours per day, and review any board resolution that documented an emergency school closure. And then again, a citation is available, 46-120B9. Next, please. The auditors will verify that the expanded learning opportunities program were offered on all school days. They will verify that the combined instructional time, including recess, lunch, and expanded learning opportunities time, were no less than 9 hours on all individual school days. They will also, and for the frontier sites, this requirement is 8 hours in addition instead of 9 hours. And the citation is Education Code 46-120B1C and G2.
Great. And again, we wanted to show you this from the audit guide specifically, because as we've been saying, everything in the audit guide aligns with what is an education code. And so you'll see for this process, it's verify, right? But the requirement is there. Was it offered on all days? Was it 9 hours? And so these completely align with what's in education code, except now it's just a verification process, or they're checking this procedure and whatnot. So we just wanted to highlight this procedure. Get in the audit guide, get in the FPM instrument, start looking at it, start highlighting it, start making notes, asking yourself questions. And actually, I even recommend at like your management meetings that you're having, FPM should be a topic of discussion on a regular basis, or even audits, right? Because it's dealing with compliance, bare minimum. So that's definitely another promising practice. All right, and this is timely because we just got these questions from the field yesterday, asking it was a consortium, and I guess an LEA had asked them for some documentation. And again, so these are the type of documents that you're probably going to be asked for. One, provide a copy of the communication to families about the ELO program, right? That has to deal with the offer. Provide a list of registration forms received. Provide a master list of students enrolled. Provide an attendance calendar or your school calendar that shows this is every day that school is in session and every day that we provided in expanded learning opportunities program. Let's see. Provide a pupil to staff ratio for TK and K and all other grades. Again, documentation that can show the staff roster versus a student list. Verification that the program consisted of educational and literacy elements, tutoring or homework assistance. Again, as Esther had mentioned, start building this stuff right now into your box and start adding to it. And that way, guess what? At any given time, you can just pull this information and you always have it. And every year you just make updates to it. And then again, provide a copy of the program plan. This is your Bible. All right. If you don't remember anything else today, the program plan is your Bible for Expanded Learning Opportunities program. It's a living document, as Iqbal said. It can be updated, it can be changed, and it's yours. We're not even collecting them at the department. It is your program plan. The only thing we're going to be doing is verifying the requirements and making sure that you're meeting those requirements. All right, Iqbal,
George, there was a
Let's talk about
question.
comprehensive programs here. Take it away.
Okay, I think there was a question by Beth Pine whether they can go ahead and add the expenditure list or types of expenditure to the ELO-P program plan. I personally do not believe that's doable, but if you are able to add that kind of a list, that'll be perfectly fine. Otherwise, as far as the expenditures are for the activities included in the ELO-P program plan, the auditors and the reviewers would be reasonable and they'll accept that evidence. So all these years, for the past 12 years, we've been talking about ACES, 21st century and assets, and now we have added ELO-P program plan. And the law encourages operating a comprehensive and expanded learning program, including ELO-P program plan, ACES, 21st century, and so on. And this has shifted the way we look at the programs in audits as well as in FPMs. So what is the shift when ELO-P has been added to the expanded learning opportunities? Basically, as law requires or law encourages, one is able to operate an expanded learning program plan, with ACES 21st century as well as ELO-P funding. The only thing one needs to be careful about is that the most stringent requirements will be adopted for program evaluation. For example, the ACES program requires that the program operates till 6 o'clock. Now, if you are operating a comprehensive program and your program completes 9 hours, let's say at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, you can have all the students leave in case they wanted to, based on your early release policy. However, at least the door needs to remain open for any of the students who is participating from ACES funding. They are able to stay at the program till 6 o'clock. So keep the doors open till 6 o'clock. And if the students are leaving early, that's okay, as long as it is in accordance with the early release policy. And this also shows that early release policy is very effective and very useful, especially for ELO-P program plan, where the students are able to leave early according to their needs or to their parents' needs, their family needs, as long as the program stays open till 6 p.m.
Great.
Well, I had sorry. Is it
Go
okay
ahead.
if I ask a quick question?
Yes. Celia, yes. Ask your
Hi,
question.
Josh.
Hello.
So in our case, we are one comprehensive program, and what we do is we open up ACES to all students. And in that sense, we're meeting that requirement of the unduplicated pupil count. So we have about 130 students in our program. And then what we do with our ELO-P is we offer workshops, because we are already meeting the requirement by just opening up our ACES program to all students. We keep the ratio, we have schedules, we're following the most stringent. But what we found is then we wanted to do more. So now we're adding a new layer, and ELO-P has given us that opportunity. So we're offering up a plethora of workshops, anything from biking to cricket making to chess to ballet folklorico. And we have students that we capture that decide not to stay for the full program, time 5 days a week, but we capture more students by offering these really neat opportunities for them to learn a new skill, pottery. That's allowable use of funds, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, Celia, you hit it. And again, I'm proud because I've been to Celia's site. So thank you. And yes, exactly what Celia said. This is an opportunity. And you've heard Michael say this. Do what's best for kids, right? Especially with ELO-P, it's very different than ACES in 21st century. And so the sky is the limit. And the one thing I want to emphasize on this slide is that
Information has it, the Interschool closes May 3rd. Okay, so if you have something different.
Can someone go on mute?
No, that makes sense. May 3rd.
Thank you. The one thing I want to emphasize on this slide is that there are still a lot of myths out there regarding hours of operation, the time that students have to come. I've heard things like, well, this student met the 3 hours so they can leave. Or I've heard that, well, they don't need this and an early release. And at the end of the day, I say, listen, the education code it says nothing about a student attending 3 hours of programming. All right. And so it's really important to understand the instrument and the requirements. The other thing that's important is the early release. The early release policy, if you're doing one comprehensive program and you have ACES, it's not CDE's early release policy. It's your early release policy. And you can make your early release policy that meets the needs of your community. And so a lot of times they'll say, well, we can't because of early release. And I'll say, well, you can always update your early release policy too to meet the needs of the community. So I just wanted to highlight this because to this day, I've been in expanded learning at the state since 2008. To this day, I still hear myths about certain things in the field. And so I just wanted to highlight this to say, really connect with your system of support team, connect with your education programs consultant. We're here to help you and really have a clear documentation and a cheat sheet of the basic requirements so you can be successful.
Josh, you're going to speak about cost sharing. Would you like me to?
Okay, thanks, Iqbal. Cost sharing and why is it important? Again, I kind of mentioned this previously, but it's like if for ELO-P, if you're going to buy a portable and CD is not approving or denying, and if you're going to buy a portable, it should be used for expanded learning. And if it's going to be used for the entire school, then that's when a cost share should come into play. This is nothing new. So any equipment or items purchased with ELO-P, ACES, 21st century or assets are restricted for use by the expanded learning programs only. And again, here's an example. Any use of equipment or items purchased with the expanded learning program funds can only be used outside the program hours if the LEA has contributed at least 67% of the funds from the general fund to the program funds, since the regular school day operates 6 hours and the program operates 3 hours. So that's an example. And many times we get questions on, capital expenditures for ELO-P. And of course, we refer them to FAQ number 36 and 38 regarding expenditures and cost sharing. But I also think we always offer if they want to have a conversation. I think some people, because of ELO-P, who are not approving or denying, they just want to be sure that they're on the right path. And so I've been on many phone calls with LEAs, just ensuring that they're going down the right path with ELO-P and how they're spending the money. And once they get that confirmation, they're good to go because it is a little bit different for ACES and 21st century. Okay, so this is our ELO-P reporting, and this is a timely slide because the e-blast just went out this morning to everyone. So right now it's the TKK data. There is a link to the report. It's posted on our website. Other data that will be collected is the third-party providers, and then obviously expenses and the expenditures, and that will be sent out. There is another slide that talks about all of these things as well, and so we'll get into that in a second. But at this time, I want to invite our director, Michael Funk, to talk about what will future reporting look like? What data might CDE collect in the future? So, Michael, are you here? Here he is. Just got to get him off mute.
There we go. I wasn't allowed to unmute myself, which is unusual. So it seems like everyone described the FPM process so beautifully as a wonderful experience earlier in the webinar. I'm wondering, Josh and Iqbal, if people could request an FPM during their vacation time. Seems like that would be a great way to take your family. So what data might CDE collect in the future? First of all, there's a research and evaluation strategy committee. Heather Williams and Tom Guyam from our division are co-chairing that, and there are several members representing county offices, community-based organizations, local educational agencies, different parts of the department, and we're looking at starting to do the work between now and November of if we were to start collecting attendance for ELO-P, and I should say it's probably when we start to collect attendance for ELO-P, how will that work? And what systems would we use? Currently, there is work being done. There's a bill AB 1113 sponsored by Kevin McCarty that is looking to have CDE collect ELO-P access in the CalPADS database. And the CalPADS database does not collect attendance. It's not designed to collect attendance, but of course, providing access is one of the requirements for ELO-P. And the definition for providing access is a signed enrollment form. And so this is coming, but it's likely not going to be implemented until the 25-26 year, because it'll take a while to build out CalPADS to receive that. And then once that's built out, a new element collected in CalPADS is never launched in the middle of the year. It's always at the start of the new school year, fiscal year. So, and we will be looking at somehow collecting attendance, especially if it's one comprehensive program. We know that many LEAs, local educational agencies, are collecting attendance now, and many local educational agencies have linked that attendance to other data. We've had several educational leaders share with us examples. So as I'm, it's budget season, it's the budget hearing season. I've testified in front of the Assembly Education Budget Committee and the Senate Education Budget Committee. In both committees, there has been an acknowledgement that there is no aggregate statewide data on ELO-P. And I think you would all be, it would make all the sense in the world that if you're putting a $4 billion investment out to the state of California, that we ought to have some data to see how it's working. And so that's the direction we're going. So there was a specific decision by the legislature to limit the collection of statewide data. It's already been mentioned what data we are collecting, and the big one is going to be what money's been spent for 21-22 apportionment, 22-23, and that detailed survey is going to be sent out to the field July 1, due September 30th. So that's going to tell us where people have spent money, where they haven't, and give us a sign of our first indicator. But attendance will be necessary. But in the meantime, the Research and Evaluation Strategy Committee, there's a subgroup that's forming to do a meta-analysis of those local educational agencies that have collected data. So in the first Assembly Education Budget Committee, San Diego Unified School District was also on the panel and testified. And they specifically referenced their data and student level impact on students that attended a certain dosage of the ELO-P programs. We know that that's out there. And so a meta-analysis is identifying a number of local educational agencies from diverse settings, collecting the information that they've collected. And this would be a volunteer. Districts would volunteer to do this. No one's going to be mandated to do this, but collect this information and put it together in a report that we could make public to say, as we're moving towards more aggregate statewide data, look at what we've collected from districts that have done good data collection based on their attendance and program. So that's where we're at. Happy to keep everyone informed as we move forward. Back to you, Josh and Iqbal.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate that. And we're going to keep on moving. We only have a few minutes left. So some of these slides we're going to go through that we've already kind of talked about. This is the ELO-P TK data report. Again, this is just the exact language, but the report, the e-blast has been sent out. So everyone should have that. This is the third-party report that will be required. And this last one is just the one that Michael just talked about, the ELO-P expenditure report that will be sent out July 1st on that. And then we have a few minutes. So I just wanted to ask some questions of Iqbal, and then we'll wrap this up and I'll pass it back to Nat. But Iqbal, question for you. Since we're not approving or denying expenditures, why would there be findings for FPM when we're going out there?
Thank you, Josh. So every community has unique needs, and each LEA's ELO-P program plan is going to address their unique community needs in the ELO-P program plan. As long as the expenditures are necessary, reasonable, and documented for the activities in the ELO-P program plan, the LEA should be fine. In case the expenditures are being made outside the what is in the ELO-P program plan, it will be misuse of public funds, and there will be audit findings and FPM findings. Hope
Great.
that helps.
Thank you. And Iqbal, we've talked about the cost share agreement throughout the presentation today. Again, put a little bow on what is the cost share agreement, and does it say this anywhere in education code? Also, is there an existing cost share agreement template somewhere? Can you tell us about that?
So all the expanded learning grants, as well as apportionment, ACES 21st Century Assets, and expanded learning opportunities program funding, they are to be spent for a specific purpose, which is before and after school program and during the summer session, intersession. So anytime these funds, any equipment that is purchased by these funds and is being used by regular day school, that is a no-no, and that ends up in supplanting. So it is much appropriate for an LEA to go ahead and do a cost share with the after-school program funding to purchase these equipment, so that this same equipment could be used during the regular day school or for non-expanded learning opportunities students as well.
Great. And there is really no cost share template. That's something that if there is a big ticket item, we will want to know the percentage of the sources of funding and so on and so forth. I'm going to keep going, Iqbal, because we're running short on time, so we can cover this. We've already talked about some of the best practices. Thank you for sharing some of that and also some of your experiences. But before we pass it over, we definitely wanted to just kind of share these resources with you. So again, the ELO-P FAQs, I can't tell you enough. Have it up. Do a control find if you need to search for a specific topic. But this is what our staff goes to when questions come to us in the field, and even our system of support. This is one of our first resources that we're going to. Another important resource, the FPM instrument, as mentioned before. There will be two separate instruments, one for expanded learning and one for fiscal monitors. Again, the K-12 audit guide, that's the link, and then the penalty calculator. Again, you can play around with it, but this is, as Iqbal said, this is something that the auditors will be using as well as informing school fiscal services. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
So one last thing I want to say, I want to share it over here, is that if you have any compliance regarding question, please reach out to your PMO EPCs. And if you have any technical assistance questions, please reach out to your regional EPCs. First, reach out to your county leads, and they will reach out to the regional EPC if the TA question they are not able to answer. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to share this with you.
Yeah, and thank you, Iqbal, for this. Thank you, everyone that kind of chimed in, sharing your own experiences or helped with the chat. It's very appreciated. And at this time, passing it back to Melissa or Nat.
Yep, it's me. Thank you, everyone. Thanks again, Iqbal and Josh, and also Michael for jumping in there on a few slides. I think this was a super informative ELO-P Academy workshop, and I know a lot of folks are requesting the slide deck and the recording, and I will do my best to get those uploaded to the website and emailed out to participants as soon as possible. And I'm going to stop sharing one more time and try this again, because you should be seeing my screen. Do we see my screen now? All right. Sorry, little tech glitch there. Super important, just a few closing comments before we open up to our regional breakouts. We mentioned earlier how important it is to connect with our system of support for expanded learning. And so we will drop the link in the chat, and you can also scan the QR code to connect, especially if you have FPM related or compliance related questions. You can seek support from the SSEL. And also, I think Iqbal dropped his email address in the chat that we'll also share in our resources. Thank you for your participation today. We do take everyone's feedback and apply it as we apply continuous quality improvement to our Academy series. And so in a moment, we will drop the link to our feedback form in the chat, and you can also scan the QR code here as we design ELO-P technical assistance and support offerings for next year.